tonight I'm going to talk about responsible innovation. What is responsible innovation? We have quite an interdisciplinary group here tonight. And so I'd like to lay a groundwork for everyone so that we all know what we're talking about, what kind of criteria is of interest. Then I'm going to talk about responsible innovation in quantum technologies. So what research has already been done in the field. Next, I'm going to discuss sustainability and then some criteria for assessing the sustainability of quantum technologies. And because there hasn't been research on how we assess the sustainability of quantum technologies in the social science or humanities literature, I'm actually going to refer to some of the literature that does exist on assessing sustainability for emerging technologies like artificial intelligence systems. Let's get started. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the group chat or to save them until the end. So when we talk about responsibility, we're talking about accountability for actions and the consequences of actions, moral agency, responsibility for others, collective responsibility, and legal responsibility are just some of the ways of understanding the responsibility concept.
I'm sorry.
Yes?
I think you are not sharing the slides.
Ah, I'm sorry. Let me make sure.
Thanks. Or at least for
Thank
me, I don't see them.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, didn't my screen share didn't work. Um,
It's okay now.
okay,
Maybe you
now
you
it's
can yes, that's better.
perfect. All right. So sorry. Thank you for telling me. I didn't realize that it hadn't shared correctly. All right. So you didn't get to see the first slide, which was on the outline of what we're going to do. But now to talk about responsibility. So we have to ask questions about who can be held responsible and what are we responsible for? So what duties do we have? What is the sphere of responsibility? So for example, who can be held responsible if I fall and I break someone's computer? We might say that I'm the cause of the action, but am I really responsible if I had a heart attack, for example, and that's why I fell? What are we responsible for? What duties do we have? What is the sphere of responsibility? Well, we might say that parents have a responsibility to their children, that professors have a certain responsibility to their students. So RI applies the notion of responsibility to research and innovation. So recognizing responsibility at the research and development stage, it links the implications to research of research and industry out in the world, and it evaluates and deliberates on the future of technologies at an early stage. So I think it's about recognizing that emerging technologies have both a positive and negative impact. Responsible innovation takes seriously the idea that technologies create new risks, and it recognizes the ability of technologies to solve problems as well. So the positive, the negative, and I think overall, acknowledging the way that technologies shape the world. So early roots of a kind of responsible innovation approach, long before the term itself was in use, can be seen in the Asilomar Conference in 1975. So to give context, scientists were just learning how to manipulate DNA from various sources into combinations that were not known to exist naturally. So although they were confident that the new technology offered considerable opportunities, the potential health and environmental risks were unclear. So the scientists actually gathered together at the Asilomar conference, and they developed guidelines which would shape the trajectory of their research. So the idea was that they wanted to keep the research going, keep innovating, but align research with values and acknowledge the risks that this kind of research entailed. So responsible innovation puts an emphasis on the process from design to use and looks at every aspect of that process. It enlarges the notion of responsibility, frames innovation as a means to tackle societal challenges, and I think a key point is that it often valorizes collaboration with industry. We'll keep that in mind for later. An early article on a framework for responsible innovation in 2013 outlined the 4 key features of responsible innovation: anticipation, reflexivity, inclusivity, and responsivity. So anticipation is about assessing the future and predicting risks. It's about visions of what we want the future to look like. Reflexivity is about analyzing our research, our beliefs, and questioning assumptions we might have. Inclusivity is about engaging with the public and having specific engagement activities to bring in public opinion about technologies. And responsivity is allowing for change, so having corrective actions that take into account incoming knowledge. So in theory, responsible innovation has been described as a commitment of care for the future through collective stewardship of science in the present. In practice, it's about asking what kind of plausible futures exist, ethical reflection on those futures, multi-stakeholder deliberation, and decisions about what to do next. It's a broad field, and there are competing values at work and diverse perspectives, but it promotes ethical, inclusive, and value-sensitive innovation in general. And one of the points that I mentioned on a previous slide was about collaboration with industry. So again, we'll talk about this later, framing innovation as a vehicle for social good and what that means for criticism of responsible innovation. And we'll discuss that at a later point. So some people criticize emptiness of corporate promises, that maybe this is a kind of greenwashing. Some innovations will be selected over others, and who determines that? There's value placed on economic growth, and again, like I said, some things we'll talk about a little bit later, but this is a point of major criticism about connection to industry, about economic growth, about techno-solutionism, that technology is applied to tackle social problems and linked to an optimistic account of technological trajectories. And that's not necessarily what all scholars agree with. When we talk about responsible innovation, one of the reasons it's a really useful approach for talking about technologies, despite some criticism, is because it's also applicable at a kind of policy and governance level. And so at the level of the European Commission, it's often described as responsible research and innovation, RRI, described as a transparent interactive process by which societal actors and innovators become mutually responsive to each other. So responsible research innovation is about governing innovation processes and outcomes. It's more of a framework at a policy level for assessing the impact of innovation, and it's going to use specific normative anchor points to define what is the right development of technology. So if we think of responsible innovation as being based on those four features, anticipation, reflexivity, inclusivity, and responsivity, now we're going to have specific assessment points. And so at the European Commission level, those are gender equality, ethics, science education, public engagement, open access mechanisms in education, and governance. So for example, maybe a new funding call or a new program might be assessed along these 6 key indicators. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about what responsible innovation is to provide a base for thinking about responsible innovation and quantum technologies. But it's worth asking how do ethical questions, how do questions of responsible innovation apply to quantum technologies, given that to a large degree, the second generation of quantum innovation isn't yet in practical use. So there's a really interesting article recently published by Moritz Kopp, where he talks about some of the sort of quantum questions, ethical and societal questions that quantum technologies are posing. And even if we don't see full-scale quantum computers yet, that are worth asking now and thinking about now at the development stage. So he talks about open science versus protecting trade secrets. So this idea that that there are national security questions that quantum technologies create that lead to sort of protective measures that might go against some of our open science goals. Cryptographic questions and information security, the possibility that quantum communications could really change information security. Global access versus intellectual property. And again, this is about who is going to have access to quantum technologies, given that a lot of quantum research happens in the global north, that there might be strengthened inequalities due to quantum technologies, and then sustainability problems. So more data, increased usage could lead to more energy use. So in the responsible innovation literature, quantum technologies have received quite a bit of recent attention, and I'm going to briefly review some of the issues that they point out related to quantum technologies, and then point out where we might need more research, and I'm going to say it's on sustainability. So Conan and Greenwald wrote an article in 2017 where they talk a lot about issues of hype related to quantum technologies, and also a lack of inclusivity. So the idea that stakeholders are not able to get involved in the responsible research process or vocalize their concerns. So they advocate for a strong RRI approach, which they consider to be necessary for responsible quantum innovation. So linking legislative action and policymaking to stakeholder dialogue, create activities for public engagement, and clearly define anticipated results and processes related to quantum innovation. Article from 2021 from a team in Oxford investigates key research questions with research hubs, and they really emphasize needing education about quantum technologies, that there's a lot of mystery related to the word quantum. And again, multi-stakeholder dialogue, emphasizing pathways between researchers, policymakers, and industry actors. So for them, the key issues are comprehensibility, inequality, and global access, whereas before it might have been about comprehensibility and inclusivity. Another article from the Oxford team really talks about using RI as a way to envision the future and to sort of map out technological trajectories that remain pretty unclear right now. And they emphasize the need to assess possible risks and take steps to have responsible innovation correct for those and shape the emerging form of quantum technologies in a responsible way. And finally, an article by Tara Robertson on interviews with quantum researchers. And this is about even locating responsibility. And I think this is a question we're not going to talk about a lot today, but that is interesting in a interdisciplinary series that features both social scientists and physicists about who's responsible for what at the theoretical stage. Are you responsible when you don't know where your research is going? And her idea is that we need to build awareness through discussion with researchers. So in 2024, a group of professors from US universities, or mainly from US universities, released a 10-principle framework for responsible quantum innovation. They focus on safeguarding, engaging, and advancing these terms for like categories of responsible innovation. The framework, they say, will be a departure point that would hopefully evolve into governance, but for now is just for thinking about responsible innovation. And they cite some specific risks that are linked to quantum technologies that other technologies are not characterized by. They emphasize that QT should be linked to social good. They emphasize multi-stakeholder dialogue and also point out the risk of strengthening inequalities caused by quantum technologies being used in the global north and available in the global north. And it's actually the first mention that we have in their 8th principle on actively stimulate sustainable cross-disciplinary innovation. So it's the first mention we have of sustainability in an article that I've seen in the responsible innovation literature on quantum technology. So I think what's important here is that they mention it, but we don't have a lot of context or any criteria for assessment. So overall in the literature, there's very clear recommendations for more education, make quantum more comprehensible, more transparency, so evaluation, clarity, corrective action mechanisms, more global accessibility. We need quantum readiness, but also preparation for how we're going to make quantum technologies available, for example, in the Global South, and more public dialogue, stakeholder engagement activities. But sustainability is not emphasized in the literature, and we still need more criteria and more understanding for what it would mean to have sustainable quantum innovation. So why is sustainability important? I think in a group of researchers, most of us already know the basics, that it's a defining issue of our time, that it leads to extreme weather patterns, decreases in biodiversity, insecurities around food and water, and will transform many aspects of how humans live in the world in the future. So sustainability approaches recognize that humans have impacted the environment, that current social and economic developments are not sustainable, and that our goal is to maintain human well-being in the present, but also ecosystems. And although we want to meet those present needs, we also need to guarantee that future generations can meet their needs. So it's about limits on how much we can consume. Sustainable development is a common term in the literature. Sustainable development really does emphasize economic growth. It's about growth without resource depletion. And a lot of us are familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, but no country is on track to reach Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So sustainability is not a key topic in responsible innovation literature on quantum technologies. I should point that out because it's not on the slide. So we did see that the article released in 2024 from COP did talk about sustainable cross-disciplinary innovation, but we need to include sustainability in more detail. And we need to think about what kind of criteria we could use to assess sustainable quantum innovation. And I think this is really important to put this emphasis on sustainability and sustainable criteria for assessing sustainability, because when the values that we select and make important in a responsible innovation approach foreground what is considered important and desirable. It's a quote from an article on responsible innovation from 2020. So this idea that when we emphasize sustainability, it's making it very clear that this is important and desirable, and a key indicator for responsible innovation in the future. I think it's justified to emphasize sustainability in the IR approach because RI views innovation as a tool for social good, and climate change and social good are connected. We have to make changes for the future. RI is about aligning technology with values, and it's about visions of the future with technology. So it makes sense to make sustainability an important value for our responsible quantum innovation.
What do you mean by that?
It's
right here.
Oh, I think somebody has their audio.
Yeah.
Painas. I think someone has their audio unmuted. Do you think you could mute yourself? Thank you. Sorry. So in the more general responsible innovation literature, I think that we also see a lot of emphasis on sustainability and on the challenges of climate change. So articles talk about meeting social, ethical, and environmental goals, preserving the environment at the European Commission level, that our strategies for responsible innovation are about smart, inclusive, and sustainable growth. So I think in the general literature, we see a lot more emphasis on sustainability, and we just haven't yet seen that emphasis in the literature specific to quantum innovation. So just to briefly point out that sustainability is not without its own critics and its own problems. Uh, Sustainability is tied to growth. It's criticized for being anthropocentric, so basically focusing on human needs and the human position in the world. It has been accused of basically being a form of greenwashing, making things sound more eco-conscious and eco-friendly than they are. And some describe it as basically repairing a house that should be rebuilt. So sustainability really maintains the social and economic status quo. And we need to think about alternatives. Some of those alternatives are frugality and sobriety. So environmental justice, sustainable degrowth, earth planetary boundaries, strong planetary boundaries, and disconnection from industry. And I'm going to very briefly mention them because I think it's interesting if we're talking about sustainability to also talk about what are some of the other concepts and approaches out there that are alternatives that maybe go further. Environmental justice is really about the protection of environmental rights and interspecies justice. So it rejects human exceptionalism. Um, it also talks about the role of power asymmetry, so basically structural injustices in society. And on the screen, on the slide, you see a picture of a river in New Zealand, which was legally recognized as having rights. So that would be like an example of a big win for the environmental justice movement. Land ethic from Aldo Leopold and deep ecology, represented by Arne Nass, both pictured here, are two approaches which really recognize that we shouldn't always prioritize human interests. Viewing humans as members of a larger community, the interdependency of the human and non-human. And then there's Earth system boundaries. So these are specific thresholds for maintaining and enhancing the stability and resilience of the Earth system over time. So they might be for the climate, for fresh water, for nutrients and air pollution. And there's a really interesting article from Rockstrom et al. Published in 2023 if you're interested in learning more about these Earth system boundaries. Okay, so those are a few alternatives to the concept of sustainability or sustainable development goals. But at the end of the day, at the policy level, at the governance level, at the practical level, environmental justice and the more progressive degrowth alternatives or low-tech alternatives are not really options in the same way that a sustainable approach and assessing sustainability is for emerging technologies. And in the next part of the seminar, I want to focus on what are we talking about when we talk about sustainable innovation for technologies and what kind of criteria can we use to assess quantum technologies? What characterizes sustainable technologies? There are sustainability-oriented innovations, SOIs. These are innovations that seek to create social and environmental value in addition to economic returns. So the idea is, what are the objectives in addition to economic value? Recommendations for guiding innovation, a focus on technology doing good, but what about development and usage? Okay, so what the technology does, climate-friendly objectives do not necessarily mean that a technology is sustainable. And I'm going to use Van Weinberg's criteria from 2021 to discuss this. So she says, technologies may have sustainability applications, but to be sustainable, they must be developed and deployed sustainably. So sustainability applications might tackle climate change, for example, by an artificial intelligence system that monitors pollution. But sustainable technologies are those that have a reduced environmental impact. For example, minimizing energy consumption. So Van Weinberg's this sort of two-pronged approach to analyzing sustainability. She applies it to artificial intelligence systems. And I'm going to just say now that when we talk about criteria for sustainable technologies, we actually do have to look at criteria from the research on other technologies, i.e. not quantum technologies, because that literature doesn't exist yet. So I'm going to talk about some criteria that come out of literature that is for technologies more generally, and hopefully the literature on sustainable quantum innovation will be emerging. um, so AI systems have a lot of sustainability applications. So think about processing image data and identifying poachers in protected parks, or monitoring noises to prevent deforestation, tracking pollution in specific environments. But these applications don't necessarily consider the impact of training and deploying the system. So they can be characterized by intensive energy use and very non-eco-friendly raw material extraction. And so, for example, there's been a lot of research on energy use in particular related to artificial intelligence systems. And so I think that, for example, the Struble article is about large language models, and the carbon dioxide emissions are really large. And so, for example, training 40 days of Google's AlphaGo Zero produced 96 tons of carbon dioxide. And this question of not just what is the system for, but what is the impact of developing it and deploying it and using it over time. So we have see a lot of red AI, which means gains in accuracy are prioritized over gains in efficiency. And a lot of times increases in accuracy have come from increases in energy consumption. So some research, fairly recent research has talked about what you can do related to artificial intelligence systems to reduce energy consumption, and they talk about where you get the energy matters. For example, where is it sourced, and then what time of day, as that might determine the mix of fossil fuel and renewable energy sources. And then researchers also talk about using more energy efficient algorithms. So we've talked about minimizing energy usage, but there's also an approach called green innovation, which is about prioritizing sustainability in design and production. So this is about using environmentally friendly raw materials, also limits on energy consumption, minimizing emissions and pollution, and avoiding damaging local ecosystems. Green innovation probably needs specific environmental regulations, just because to really call a product green, you might have to, it might not be so interesting for a company unless they have to do it. So sobriety and frugality are another approach that's discussed a lot in the sustainability literature. And this is about minimizing usage. So after something is already deployed, it's about asking, questioning our usage. So avoiding overconsumption and impact. It's an acknowledgement that even when technologies are more efficient, if they are used more, overall consumption may increase. And I think it questions our beliefs about using technology and how much energy we need to use. And I think sobriety and frugality starts to approach more low-tech concepts in philosophy and in humanities and social science research. Okay, so there has been research on quantum technologies or quantum innovation and sustainability from the physics side. And that's really important to note. So I've listed here just a few articles that talk about applications for sustainability and sustainable quantum innovation. I'll also note that there are some initiatives that tackle this subject. For example, there's an Open Quantum Institute that talks a lot about sustainability in Geneva, and then there's the Quantum for Climate initiative and the Quantum Energy Initiative. And there are actually some of the founders of both those initiatives are, I believe, participating here with us tonight, which is really great to have their perspectives with us. So, for example, for a lot of the reports from the Open Quantum Institute in Geneva, they talk a lot about quantum technologies with sustainable applications, and there is a lot of literature about sustainability applications. However, interestingly enough, reports in 2022 and 2023 talked about sustainable applications, but not the sustainability of quantum technologies, which I think is really key. So there has been research on potential applications like sustainable agriculture, energy storage, carbon capture, smart city energy, more efficient transport and waste management, but not a lot of discussion about carbon footprint, what materials are extracted, what is the usage, what is the energetic impact. So we really would want to assess sustainable quantum innovation by not just what the technology does, but also the impact of developing and using it. And there have been some articles that really approach this problem exactly. So I'm going to use the case of quantum computing because that's where the research that I've seen is, and the predicted quantum energy advantage. So quantum computers are predicted to have an energy advantage in two different cases. One, solving problems more quickly. So for example, a classical supercomputer could crack the RSA 830 encryption in 8 to 9 days, while a quantum computer it could complete the task in just 16 minutes. So the idea is using less energy because it completes tasks more quickly. But in the Philosophie paper, apologies if I pronounced that wrong, the researchers also predict that there may be quantum computers that use less energy in tasks, even when it takes longer to solve a problem. And that might depend on the qubit quality and hardware and software parameters. Another article by Jaska and Montenegro, again, apologies if I mispronounce any names, say that quantum technologies may have a quantum energy advantage in some situations, but not others. And again, I think this is really key because there's a lot of hype around what quantum technologies can do. So they say that we actually need predictive analysis to determine when it is more efficient to use classical systems and when it is more efficient to use quantum technologies. So they think that there's a threshold and that we need to assess when quantum energy advantage is really present. So not to just assume. So an RI assessment of quantum technologies would still consider key features of responsible innovation, risks. It would consider education. It would consider stakeholder engagement. It would consider values. But if we put more emphasis on an RI approach, what would we be assessing? So based on the criteria that I've discussed today, we would be discussing energy consumption. So when is it that the technology has a quantum energy advantage, and what is the environmental impact in terms of energy? We would consider resource extraction, so the kind of green innovation criteria of how eco-friendly is the process. We would consider the sobriety and frugality approach. So we would think about usage. So for example, even if a technology is more energy efficient, if use increases a lot, does overall consumption increase? And then we would still think about system objectives because obviously systems that are designed and deployed to target climate change problems are really valuable and we want to think about them. So those are some of the criteria that I think we can have in mind if we want to envision responsible and sustainable quantum technologies. And that's what I've been arguing tonight, that it is possible to talk about certain criteria. Now, this is, like I said at the very beginning, a very new topic. It's something that is worth discussing with physicists, with social scientists, and philosophers, and is something that will probably change over time because this is just, like I said, the first effort. So I hope that that we can have some interesting questions from you, the participants today, in relation to sustainability, in relation to responsible innovation, or in relation to some sustainable criteria for quantum technologies. And I'll just finish by summing up some of the points from today. That responsible innovation is an approach from design to deployment, that it can be applied at a policy or governance level using some of the key indicators that we discussed related to responsible research and innovation and the European Commission. I argued that we should emphasize sustainability in the responsible innovation approach, and the way we do that is by specifying certain criteria, energy use, resources, and usage. So my idea is that there's a little bit of a literature gap around this topic, and I wanted to discuss this and bring it to light.